Okay, part two. All right. What when it comes down to policy proposals, because obviously there's not much being proposed on policy when it comes down to the Trump campaign, that makes it actually any which way desirable for people to want to vote for that fucker. Especially because of the factor that a lot of people have taken a look at the amount of money that they've ended up losing when he ended up doing stuff like, for example, having his supporters at the beginning of his first run, be like, hey, make a donation. And then they made a donation, and then recurring donations on a monthly basis ended up happening. So ultimately he ended up fraudulently enriching himself while simultaneously, because of campaign finance law, anything that didn't end up getting used for his campaign ended up being able to be pocketed. you know? And obviously, the factor that there are loopholes when it comes down to campaign finance laws like that itself is an issue. That is not illegal. All right? You know, some policies that would end up actually going ahead and having some support, and actually be able to make things a little bit better for every generation. Like, first off, you know, I've been in support when it comes down to the idea of paid family leave for a long while. Like, Tim Walz is actually in support of, you know. Ultimately, there are a lot of people that end up being employers that end up legitimately being fraudsters. That end up doing everything that they can to try to avoid from having to go ahead and pay out a proper severance, and that try to, you know, get people to, through means of coercion or, harassment or, union busting tactics that, you know, are not allowed as far as labor unions go, end up tricking, parents to be into going ahead and giving up the rights that they would end up having for, you know, maternity or paternity leave. And the factor that maternity leave is so known about, but the concept of paternity leave is apparently a foreign concept, because most people end up thinking, oh, so if uh, dad ends up going ahead and, going and taking paternity leave, you know, wait, when is he going to get his balls? When is his wife going to give him his balls back out of her purse? How about it showed developmentally that the factor that households that end up having both parents in the actual household, for the initial, 6 months of the child's development, would able to be actually able to focus on parenting, that nurturing factor during those first 6 months end up going ahead and actually increasing, for example, the capability of being able to speed up the timelines when it comes down to that, child developing object permanence, end up doing better when it comes down to, the speed when it comes down to potty training, you know, not to mention that, but ultimately, you know, sometimes it ends up giving enough of a environment to even be able to help speed the child along to the point where they end up reaching milestones that they wouldn't have reached as soon, because of being able to have that joint effort, you know? I mean, kids that end up being able to have both parents paying attention just as much, from the beginning of the birth, end up going ahead and seeing their kids being able to learn how to read at an earlier age. If they're able to learn how to read at an earlier age, the chances of them, for example, being inhibited by a learning disability, their ability to be able to, you know, pick up on, for example, mathematical equations and, how process how to being able to do that in your head greatly increase, because of the factor that that stuff is exercised from that young point.